Hey everybody, alright, this is a video lecture about timing charts. It has to do with our CSC 186 course in animation, and we're going to be talking about timing charts and our timing in animation, timing charts and motion curves, but this is specifically about timing charts and what they are. What I want you to understand with timing charts is that timing charts are here to help us organize our drawings. It's going to help us plan the work that we're going to be doing. And so what happened is in the beginning, when the animation begins, of course you're just kind of learning things as they go along, but they start developing a process and they start to develop a way for lead animators to chart out what they want, and so that other animators, junior animators, could fill in the spaces. Now, one of the important things is to know how to break down a movement. So if your character or an object is moving from one place to another, whether it's walking or doing something, your character has to be posed or in a specific drawing pose that's very clear at a specific point. And then it's going to go to one other key pose. So if a character is looking at something like this, and then that's a main pose that's very clear to the audience, and then it goes like this, that would be another pose. So you have this one and this one. Well, you've got to know how long does it take to get from here to here, and what's going to happen in between those drawings. So if you look here and it takes a few frames to get to this pose, you've still got every single frame in between that, whether it's 10 frames or 20 frames or 100 frames. You've got to know what to do in between them. And so lead animators begin to develop charts, and I want to talk about that right now. So key drawings, a key drawing is also called an extreme, or a key pose if you're in 3D computer animation. And what this represents are the main drawings or the poses that illustrate the beginning and ending point of a motion. The most extreme poses of an object for that specific movement, like walking or lifting a glass. So for example, in this animation by Chuck Jones, this little character runs into the scene and he grabs a letter and he rearranges it. So if we were to look at this in real time, alright, each one of these drawings, if I go frame by frame, you can see the pose that needs to be done. So I'm going to actually I'm keying and I'm going to hold it down so you can see this. Okay, so here he comes in. So each one of these runs is a pose. Pose, 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 and this is pose, pose. But when he gets down here, I'm going to show you this. So he stops, he reaches up. So here's an extreme right there. And then he's going to have to go from that pose down to this one. Alright? And so the lead animator, Chuck Jones in this particular case, who happens to be the director, is going to draw a picture of the character like this. And then he's going to draw another picture of the character like this. And then he's going to have and then he's going to say that to get from the first pose to this pose is going to be a series of, so we've got, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so on frame 9, he's like this. And so the junior animator is going to come along and fill in those spaces. And there's a timing about, notice how the timing here, it's close. Timing means the spacing is, that's a pretty big jump. And then it's a little bit closer here than here. No, you're breaking these down There, see how it gets smaller right there and there and there? These frames between this frame and this frame and this frame are much closer together than up here. So the movement kind of moves a little quicker, and then it slows down, and then he goes over, grabs this, so there's a pose, and then the next pose. Notice how everything moves in an arc too. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but this gives you an idea. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So we have our key drawings, and then what we have is what's called in-between drawings. And the in-between drawings are the drawings placed in between the two extreme drawings. Meaning you have your pose like this and a pose like this, and then you've got to have the drawings that go in between that, bridge those two poses, whatever they might be. So we have our in-between drawings. And so what we come up with is what's called a timing chart. And the timing chart is used to determine the position of the in-betweens for the extreme drawings. So we have our extremes at one end and another, and then the in-between. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be closer in this movement to the main object, or far closer to this one, or somewhere directly in the middle? And where you place that in-between will give you a sense of how the object is moving. If the object is closer to the first drawing, if I have this one, then this one, and the first one is this one, and the next one is this one, and then the last one is this one, then it's going to look like slow and then hurry. If it's like this, if this is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the last one, then it's going to be hurry then slow. And you get this sense of cushioning or easing into something. So really you're taking your extreme drawings, your first one, your next one, whatever, and then you're filling in the gaps. Well, what's going to happen in the middle? Or is the middle a little more favoring one or the other? So we get what's called timing charts. They're called halves, where you take the distance or the amount of change, and then you put something right square in the middle. So half of the distance between here is here. So if this is frame 1 and this is frame 9, then in the middle this is going to be frame 5 or something like that. And we usually work on what's called shooting on twos, which are where you work on the odd number frames, 1, 3, 5, or 1. In our case, whatever this would be, 11, and then somewhere in the middle. So this would be 7. Or 5 or something like that. The reason we do that is because it gives us extra space in between. So if you are going 1 and 3, well, you can always slip in a 2. That could be different than 1 and 3. Whereas 1 and 2 is the same drawing, and 3 and 4 is the same drawing. If you want to slip in a half or a favor or something else, you can put a 1, 2, 3. And that's how things work. You can also break things down into thirds. Thirds, there are only 2 in-betweens placed a third of the way from the extreme, or a third from the last. So a third of the way from here is there. So you have 1, 2, 3 gaps of space. 1, 2, 3. So your object is here, and the extreme is there, and then you have a third of the way and a third of the way. Favors, as I had mentioned, is where you don't necessarily divide things equally. You have your extremes here, here. You might have what's called a breakdown in the middle. And then when you have a favor, it's not going to be quite square in the middle like it would be right here. It could be a little bit closer to the end. And that has to do with feeling it out. It means that there isn't necessarily a specific robotic type of distance, so you just got to get a feel for it and see if it moves the way that you want. Alright, another one is that if you break things down smaller and smaller and smaller, the smaller the amount of space between one drawing and another, the slower things start to feel. So for instance, if I have my extreme here, my extreme here, my breakdown in the middle, which is what that middle factor can be called, breakdown, Then I start to break down this motion from here to here to here. So halfway here, and then I just divide these in half, again, half, and then half of this space. So it's this space divided in half, 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 right there. So I have a half, a quarter, and then the quarter is divided into an eighth, and then that eighth is divided into 16th. If you're familiar with music, it's the same exact thing. You have whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, 16th note, 32nd note, 64th note, and they're smaller and smaller and smaller duration. And because you have that duration, you have that quick movement. So in music, the beats are faster, but in animation, it looks slower. So it's really quite an interesting contrast between how it feels and how it would sound. If you were to look at this, it's kind of interesting. And so what I want you to think about is that when you, depending on how you arrange your timing charts, it can create different feels. So when I have equal divisions of movement, I have my extreme here to there, a breakdown, and then a breakdown, I get mechanical, even motion with no variation. It's very linear. So it's like a machine moving back and forth, like a piston. But when I start to divide things and add my halves and my quarters and my eighths and my 16ths, I get a much different feel. I get this softening and pushing and softening and pushing. It's just a completely different movement. Now, you're going to look at several videos created by the renowned animator Norm McLaren. And he does some incredibly good and accurate descriptions of this idea of timing and spacing and the effect it has on the way things move and the way we interpret that movement. You can give a playfulness quality to your objects by how it moves. Quick little movements, or it can actually look scared. And all with using a cutout circle and black cardboard paper. It's fascinating and something that you really got to think about, not only how it's done technically, but the psychological implications that it has on the viewer. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a demonstration of creating a pendulum swing with Flash, taking these ideas into consideration. So here in Flash, I have a pendulum drawn. So I'm using a simple circle and a straight line, and I'm actually creating that in a symbol, so I don't have to draw it over and over again for this demonstration. And I'm going to do this animation for you in a separate video, that covers just doing this project. So what we're going to be doing in class is working on creating a pendulum moving and swinging. First, it's going to be linear, where everything is equal, and then it's going to have some easing in and easing out, where it feels like it slows down, gravity gets a hold of it, and then it swings back, and gravity gets a hold of it and swings down. So that's where we're going, and that's what we're going to be doing in class. I have a separate video that covers that.